Topic of discussion for this evening is controversies to consensus in the management of hypertension. So we have a lot of guidelines in the pipeline, also a lot have been published. So complexity, controversies and disagreements in the treatment of hypertension has been noted over the last 4 years. So initially we had the JNC 7 for a long time, then came the JNC 8 and maybe now JNC 9. So a lot of activity from 2013 to 14 and now the recent sprint trial in 2015 to 2016. Was it possible that the future would be a return to the past? Many questions come to the mind of the general practitioner, the physicians, when they treat, when they get to treat patients with hypertension. Like, what is the blood pressure target number in hypertension treatment in the elderly? So what is the therapeutic goal? What BP is too high? Is it 160, 150, 140, etc.? What BP is too low? And can too low be harmful? Other questions like, when do we measure the blood pressure? What time? Is it in the morning, evening, bedtime? Does posture have any effect? Then the level of activity which is taken before the recording of the blood pressure, does it affect in any way? Then what medicines are effective with the least adverse events? So there are a lot of questions which come to mind. Then there are issues like intensive treatment, that is strict control versus less stringent control. Then what about the gray zone? What about the blood pressure when it is in the range of 130? So what is the difference of trial results comparing the mercury manometer compared to digital or the aneroid manometer? So let us try and find out what we have in store. And to diagnose and manage hypertension, recently there are various regional and global guidelines that have been published. And to guide, basically these guidelines, they guide the medical community to treat hypertension effectively. But what have these guidelines done? Too many guidelines. They have caused needless confusion, disagreement and discontent. And the very intent of the guideline loses its value when the result is confusion and not clarity. So hypertension guidelines from almost many societies, including the Hypertension Society of India, are available and everyone must be aware of them. These guidelines have led to complexity, controversies, disagreements, and ever-growing confusion. So the talk this evening will be in this outline: the Indian scenario, the history of BP measurement. BP measurement actually has a very important role, as you will realize subsequently. Then the guidelines for hypertension, the similarities and differences, newer trials, then the chronopharmacology, and after that I shall conclude. So coming to the Indian scenario, the prevalence in India is almost 30%. Prevalence is more in urban compared to the rural areas. And the most important part is that despite all efforts leading to treatment, prevention, etc., the level of awareness about BP is still low in India. This is very worrying, which is also evident with a lower proportion of patients achieving optimal control. That means not only people are less aware of hypertension, but the level of control in the treated patients is also very low. Now coming to the history and the blood pressure measurement, we had Stephen Hall was the first person to measure BP in a very crude form. He measured the height of the column of blood after cannulating the carotid artery in a horse with a brass pipe. And I think that was, although it was a good attempt, but very painful. What he did was, the brass pipe was attached to a 12-inch glass tube, which was connected to the pipe via a trachea of a goose. Indeed, very interesting. Then a second try, that is almost 100 years later, a mercury manometer connected to the artery was used to measure the BP. However, both these methods were invasive. Then came Riva-Rocky, who was the inventor of the sphygmomanometer and who had finally discovered or invented the mercury sphygmomanometer. The measurement of blood pressure in the clinical procedure, it is the clinical procedure of greatest importance, and that is performed in the most slopiest manner. To date, the mercury sphygmomanometer remains the gold standard device for BP measurement. But recently there are environmental concerns of mercury sphygmomanometers, keeping in mind that it is a potent neurotoxin. So it has been replaced or suggested to be replaced by aneroid or digital sphygmomanometers. And there are controversy regarding the accuracy of BP measurement using automated devices. Automated devices, in general, they underestimate both the systolic as well as the diastolic blood pressure in adults and overestimate in children and adolescents in 5 to 17 years of age. The Indian hypertension guidelines recommend that the physician should gradually phase out mercury sphygmomanometers and replace these with aneroid and digital meters. Some mercury BP machines can be kept only for the purpose of calibration. So which is more accurate in measuring the blood pressure, a digital or an aneroid sphygmomanometer? In one study, it was shown that greater effectiveness of aneroid device in comparison to the digital device. So both the aneroid and the digital device were compared to a standard mercury sphygmomanometer, and it was found that the aneroid device was better compared to the digital device. Coming to the Indian guidelines on BP measurement. An average of 3 readings should be taken at an interval of 2 to 3 minutes. Patients should refrain from smoking or taking tea or coffee, exercise for at least 30 minutes before measuring the blood pressure. And the patient should be allowed to sit for at least 5 minutes in a quiet room before taking the BP recording. Measurement should be done preferably in the sitting or supine position. And the patient's arm should be fully bare. There should be no intervening clothes between the BP cuff and the arm at the level of the heart. And measure the blood pressure in both arms at first visit and use higher of the 2 readings. So measuring blood pressure during the first visit in both the arms is important so that we can detect during the first visit if there is any difference in the upper arm blood pressure. That may indicate different etiology. So some of the key techniques, as I've already said, patients should be resting for 5 minutes. All these have very important implications because if the patients do not rest and once the patient enters your room and you immediately check his BP, you might get an elevated BP to the level of almost 12/6. So that is very important. So patients should be seated, and all these have effects on the BP measured. Importantly, if the initial BP first reading is higher, then 3 readings 1 minute apart should be taken. First reading should be discarded and the average of the last 2 readings should be taken. So this process requires almost 8 to 12 minutes in one patient. Now what about the role of the ambulatory BP monitoring? So ABPM provides information on 24 hours average BP as well as on mean values over the defined periods of time, day, night, morning, while the patient is able to conduct a normal life. This correlates closely with hypertension-related organ damage, and its changes by treatment than does office BP measurement only. And ABPM is very important in identifying non-dippers. That means those patients who do not have the normal fall in the blood pressure during sleep. So what are the indications for ambulatory blood pressure monitoring? So the patients who are borderline hypertensive, white coat hypertension, isolated systolic hypertension, nocturnal blood pressure, resistant hypertension, hypertension of pregnancy, and patients who have hypotensive symptoms on medications. So the recommended levels or the normal values according to the European Society of Hypertension guidelines, the normal value should be during the awake period less than 135/85, and while during sleep it should be less than 120/70. So what are the limitations of ABPM? The provision of intermittent measurement during which the individual is sedentary rather than ambulatory. The technique makes demands on the individual and may cause discomfort, and most importantly, it is expensive. So what are the similarities between the different guidelines of hypertension? So there are 3 major guidelines now, the JNC 8, the European Society of Hypertension or the European Society of Cardiology, and the American Society. So all these guidelines have different threshold for starting drug treatment. According to JNC 8, in those patients who are less than 60 years, we need to start treatment. That is, the threshold for starting medications is more than 140/90. And in those more than 160, the threshold is 150, more than 150/90. Similarly, in the European Society guidelines, the threshold is in general more than 140/90. And also in the American guidelines, it is 140/90 in those who are less than 80 years. So difference lies in the age. JNC 8 says it is less than 60 years, and the American says it is less than 80 years. And what about beta blockers used as first line therapy? So only the European Society gives importance to beta blockers as first line of treatment, but not the JNC and the American Society. And what about initiation of drug therapy with two drugs? So JNC says that if the BP is more than 160/100, we need to start with two medications. And the Europeans say that if the BP is markedly elevated, that is more than 140/90, they have not mentioned a specific level. And the Americans say two drugs should be used when the BP is more than 160/100. What do the Indian guidelines say? Now we have our Indian guidelines, which is very much relevant to the patients in our country. So first, there are 4 groups of medicines which can be used: A, B, C, D. A is ACE inhibitors or ARBs. B is beta blocker. C is calcium channel blocker, and D is diuretic. So if we have a young patient, we can use either ACE inhibitors or beta blockers. And if the patient is older, that is more than 55 years, we can opt for calcium channel blockers or a diuretic. Step 2 is to add either of the 4 classes. And step 3, similarly, we can keep on adding the number of medications. And if the patient is resistant hypertension, then we can add alpha blocker or spironolactone or other diuretics. So in the diuretic, only thiazide type of diuretics has been included as a first line of treatment, either hydrochlorothiazide or chlorothalidone. Rest of the diuretics has not been given a first line preference. So if a person is resistant hypertension, that means resistant hypertension means if a person has uncontrolled blood pressure even after using 3 medications, or you can achieve controlled blood pressure with 4 medications including a diuretic. And the Indian guidelines also stress on the use of newer beta blockers. Newer beta blockers like the vasodilating beta blockers, especially nebivolol. Then we have polypills in the market. Because of the compliance rate is very low in Indian patients, polypills may be a good idea for use in Indian patients. So combination therapy is gaining popularity since a majority of patients require more than 2 drugs for sustained and effective BP control. And the Indian guidelines use of fixed drug formulation should be considered to improve compliance. So compliance is very important. And we have clustering of risk factors for cardiovascular disease, including hypertension, dyslipidemia, obesity, and insulin resistance. So a polypill can help in all the conditions. A multi-drug fixed dose combination might be useful tool against cardiovascular disease. And there are some Indian trials like TIPS 3 about polypill use in prevention of cardiovascular disease. The Indian guidelines still recommend beta blockers, as I have said, as agents for use in young hypertensives with specific indications. Chlorothalidone is now available and shown to be better than hydrochlorothiazide, and its usage is to be preferred. The benefit of beta blockers has been questioned by the JNC 8 based on 2 large trials. The LIFE study, the losartan, where losartan was more effective than atenolol in reducing cardiovascular morbidity and mortality, as well as all-cause mortality. And the ESCOT BP lowering arm study, that is the fatal and non-fatal stroke, total CV events and procedures and all-cause mortality, was lower in the amlodipine group compared to the atenolol group. That means they found that the atenolol group had more neurological adverse outcomes. So newer beta blockers like the vasodilating beta blockers do not share some of the limitations of traditional beta blockers like atenolol. And among the third generation vasodilating beta blockers, nebivolol may be particularly suitable as a first line treatment for hypertension. It may be timely for treatment guidelines to recommend third generation beta blockers as a first line option for hypertension. So coming to a few recent trials and their practical implications. The SPRINT trial. So what was this background of this trial? So this was done in non-diabetic population where cardiovascular disease composite event rates were lower in intensive, less than 120. Intensive group means systolic BP less than 120, where compared to standard treatment group with systolic BP less than 140 in non-diabetics. So they wanted to find out whether the CVD outcomes like the MI, acute coronary syndrome, stroke, heart failure, and death due to cardiovascular causes had any effect. So the SPRINT trial, they showed that the intensive treatment arm had 25% lower risk of primary outcome. So this was very important. That means a strict control of systolic blood pressure to less than 120 compared to less than 140 had better outcome. And the number needed to treat to prevent primary outcome event was only 61. But there were concerns about the safety outcomes. There was hypotension in 2.4% of patients and acute kidney injury or acute renal failure was seen in 4.1%. But the decline in GFR in the intensive treatment may represent a harmless hemodynamic effect or more serious renal injury is unclear. So the SPRINT came to the conclusion that treatment effects similar in all 6 pre-specified groups of interest, and the overall benefits of more intensive BP lowering exceeded the potential for harm. That means it was still beneficial. So how does this SPRINT study will reflect on our practice? In the SPRINT study, at each visit the patients were seated in a quiet area for 5 minutes and the BP was recorded by a commercially available automated unit that recorded 3 readings separated by several minutes with no clinician in the room. Decision was based on the average of the 3 readings. And other studies have shown that this method of BP measurement yields substantially lower readings than does the single rushed measurement typically done in our practice. So if SPRINT is applied without attention to proper BP measurement, substantial over-treatment with a higher rate of adverse events will likely occur. So would the guidelines from this trial, would the guidelines change from stringent targets of systolic BP less than 120? So average achieved systolic BP in the intensive treatment group was 121. Even in this SPRINT trial, it was not 120, it was more than 120. This likely represents a judicious balancing of the treating clinician who tried to reduce the 120 goal while avoiding side effects. So what were the drugs used? So chlorthalidone was used in the dose of 12.5 to 25 milligram per day. Then amlodipine was the calcium channel blocker, and beta blockers are now considered to be less effective in preventing cardiovascular disease events as primary treatment of hypertension, but may be needed in special subgroups in patients with coronary artery disease. There's another trial, the HOPE-3 trial. This was done among patients with intermediate cardiovascular disease risk. That means persons who had an annual rate of 1% of a cardiac event with normal or low BP. Do antihypertensives, that is hydrochlorothiazide and candesartan, reduce cardiovascular events. The HOPE-3 trial, they showed no significant difference in individual components of the outcomes, total mortality or new onset diabetes. In a subgroup of the systolic BP who was in the upper limit, the active treatment group had nominally significantly lower rates of outcomes than placebo. So HOPE-3 pays special attention again to proper BP measurement, which is very important. So this trial, the authors concluded that their findings contradicted the lower, the better hypothesis. And our data are compatible with hypothesis that treating persons without cardiovascular disease who have a systolic BP above 140 appears to be beneficial. But treatment would not be of benefit, and may be even harmful in persons whose systolic BP is already in the lower level. So coming to a few special situations like patients with diabetes and chronic kidney disease, we all know the ACCORD BP arm of the ACCORD trial. This was done in diabetic patients, type 2 diabetic patients, almost 5,000 patients. And this trial showed that targeting a systolic BP to less than 120 as compared with less than 140 did not reduce the rate of composite outcomes of both fatal as well as non-fatal cardiovascular events. So coming quickly to the goal BP, JNCA, they say if a person is less than 60 years, the goal should be less than 140/90. And irrespective of whether the patient has diabetes or chronic kidney disease, again the goal BP is less than 140/90. The Europeans say that in general less than 140/90. Patients with diabetes, they recommend less than 140/85. And patients with chronic kidney disease, if they have proteinuria, and the systolic BP should be less than 130. The Americans again have a goal BP of less than 140/90, 140/90, 140/90 in diabetics as well as CKD. And they say that a BP of 130/80 should be considered if the patient has proteinuria. The KDIGO trial, which is one of the very important trials from nephrology side, it says that the aim for less than 130/80 if albuminuria is present. Chronopharmacology. So trials of antihypertensive morning versus evening dose. So there's one trial, MAP-EC trial. 48 hours ambulatory BP showed lower systolic BP with evening dosing. And it also showed that there was effects on the total CV events with evening dosing. Under Cochrane review, they said that there was no significant difference in overall adverse events and withdrawals, but better BP control with bedtime dosing, the clinical significance of which is unknown. Two ongoing trials, they may provide further evidence. One is the time and second is the HYGIA trial. These are ongoing, one will be completed in 2019, the other shall be completed in 2020. So a few take-home practical points. The threshold to treat hypertension should be 140/90 in all patients less than 80 years. For patients who are more than 80 years, the threshold to treat hypertension should be 150/90. For patients with chronic kidney disease, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, proteinuria, the blood pressure target should be between 130/80 and 140/90. Now we should keep in mind that the issue in patients with hypertension is high BP and not low BP. And no one is asking us to lower the BP levels deliberately to 110/60 or 90/50. And common sense is still valid. And it should be simple, there should be no confusion, straightforward, and we should go for it. To conclude, hypertension remains a condition of public health importance in India. Methodology to measure accurate BP should be given due importance. Ambulatory BP monitoring is a useful tool in certain conditions. Although recent trials have provided useful information for lowering BP further, usual goals of BP should be followed. BP goals can be lowered further in some special population. Choice of drugs for controlling BP should be individualized. Till more data emerge, evening dosing of antihypertensive can be advised. It is high time that India has its own CV outcome trials.